Hi everybody, welcome back to the cabin. Going to give you an update on the food situation this year. If you've been watching the channel, if you've been watching the channel for years, you see all the food systems I've been setting up and seeing my failures and my successes in doing that. Both foraging from the land, harvesting from the land, as well as like the wild, as well as growing stuff in my gardens. My goal has always been to live off my own land as much as possible. So in that vein, what I've been doing is scattering wild plants, or not wild plants, I've been scattering domesticated fruit, vegetables, nuts, and so on throughout the landscape, throughout my properties, and hoping they grow well and that I can just sort of forage throughout the land and collect without having to put much effort into it, which is a challenge. It doesn't actually work that way as far as domesticated fruits and vegetables, for example. They don't tend to do well without tending. So they don't survive in this wild setting, especially because this is not where you would typically grow things like tomatoes, for example. You can't just let tomatoes ramble and expect them to keep propagating themselves over time. But other things like apple trees do work out pretty well. In fact, even back in the food plot, a few hundred yards back behind the cabin here, where I'm feeding deer, where I'm growing food really to feed and grow the populations of deer, bear, and moose. So I have those apple trees, a couple of peach trees and plum trees back in that clearing, and they're doing very well. Surprisingly, they're actually doing better than the garden right here, even though I've been improving the soil. So it's something about the soil up there that's a little bit better. Because I like the idea of foraging as much of my food as possible, hunting and fishing included when I say foraging, I tend to be drawn to places that have an abundance of natural foods. So one of my favorite places is nearby. It's Georgian Bay, which is the shores of Georgian Bay. Well, in the Georgian Bay itself, I guess, as well, which is a huge bay, almost like a Great Lake in itself, that goes off the east side of Lake Huron. And it's a very diverse landscape. From southern Georgian Bay, it's almost eutrophic. So shallow water, and warmer water species. And then you get into the north and you start getting into deeper, colder water, more oligotrophic and less nutrients, but big cold water fish. So you tend to get things like salmon, which have been transplanted into the Great Lakes. But wild fish, you have lake trout and whitefish, for example. And there's lots of other fish like pike and so on. And in the shallows, you get the typical bass, pike, walleye, and things like that. And then along the shoreline, lots of berries, different berries grow. Just in one short hike, spot that I really love, there's cranberries, elderberries, blackberries, raspberries, blueberries, what else? Bunchberries, some bearberries, I think, winterberry, and probably a couple others that I've left out. And then acorns. Acorns this year would be one of the foods that, because other things have failed for me this year, we would be processing acorns and eating them if we were living fully off the land. Last year there was no acorns in the entire region. I found one tree dropping acorns, and that's up in our area. It's just red oaks. We don't have white oaks here. 2 years ago, unbelievable abundance, most I've ever seen in my lifetime. This year is not quite that good, but it's pretty good. So that's going to feed the animals, so the deer and the bears and the turkeys in particular. So this year was kind of a failure for me. Past years you've seen that I've grown a lot of potatoes, and that is the only way I was able to provide all of our calories. Potatoes do grow really well here, and I was able to grow 500 pounds of them, so it was enough calories for my family between that and the wild game that I harvested, moose, deer, and bear, and wild turkey, and some other things like ducks and grouse, and no rabbits, squirrels. Now this year, I shot one small bear in the spring. I didn't get a wild turkey, which is the first time in, I don't know, a decade or more. Ducks, I haven't shot a duck yet. Oh, I shot one duck back on the pond back here. Grouse population is cyclical and it's down right now, so I have a few around the property, but not enough to that I haven't harvested any. Fish, I've done a fair bit of fishing. I've been harvesting fish. But yeah, I didn't grow potatoes, and the gardens are, because we're kind of transforming them into an orchard, so a lot more fruit. The fruit trees haven't started producing yet. I expect probably next year they'll start producing, but they haven't yet. So we got a lot of berries: blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. Anything else? Probably missing something, but we got an abundance of those, but not as quite as good as last year. So overall, I really haven't harvested that many calories from our land, so I would call this a failure. Also, speaking of having to get food from the outside, I want to thank this week's sponsor, Equip Foods. They sent me some protein bars to try out, knowing that we mainly eat like carnivores. When we do buy meat, what we've been buying is grass-fed beef. So when I saw Equip Foods a year ago for the first time and started eating their protein powder, they came out with these protein bars, which are just as healthy. We really focus on natural ingredients in our diet. And we know that Equip Foods sources natural, healthy ingredients. So there's no way milk isolates their soy. They use a third party to test for protein, micros, heavy metals, pesticides, glyphosate, microplastics, mycotoxins, and molds. The fats are healthy fats from grass-fed tallow and cocoa butter with no seed oils. Again, another thing that we've eliminated from our diet. And no processed sugar, which I haven't eaten in years. Naturally sweetened with date and honey. So made from grass-fed beef, for example, mainly grass-fed beef protein and collagen and colostrum and a few other ingredients depending on the flavor. My favorite flavor is probably peanut butter, then chocolate, and then followed by berry. Bars aren't like eating a piece of jerky, even though they are mainly beef, like I said. They're actually chewy, sort of fudgy and moist, but they don't stick to your teeth. And of course, these being individually packaged in a small quantity in the form of a protein bar, it means I can take them out when I'm out for a fishing trip or hunting trip, especially if it's a multi-day and I'm far away from refrigeration. I don't always have enough jerky made up to take those on those trips, so I can take these bars instead. So if you do want to give them a try, click on this link below or go to equipfoods.com and use my promo code Shawn James to get 20% off your first order or 35% off your first subscription. So thanks again to Equip Foods for making a great bar, making great protein powder, and for sponsoring my channel. I really appreciate it. One of the reasons we're basically failing, we changed, like I said, our diet to eat mainly red meat. And I'm talking like 1.5 pounds of red meat each per day. Like breakfast, ground beef, you've seen me make it. With eggs, and then a steak either for lunch or for dinner, and that's pretty well it. Might be some sides like cheese or like sauerkraut. We do grow and eat some fermented vegetables, but mainly just cabbage. So the reason we're not able to provide most of our calories because we're eating mainly red meat. And I didn't get a moose tag this year, so we'll get a few deer. Our family will get a few deer. We've got the bear. Hopefully my wife can get a bear this fall. We've had to buy beef. We don't like buying it from the grocery store because it's not grass-fed. It's finished on grain, like soy and corn, and it's full of glyphosates and lectins and so on. So we tend to avoid grocery store meat as much as possible. So we buy full beef from a farmer directly that we know are produced locally, grown locally, raised locally, and eat grass right up until the day they're butchered and processed. So we need to find a way to close that loophole. Now you saw last summer, especially on my other channel, that I'd started our self-reliance, which I'm not going to continue with for the following reasons. My sister and her family and my family were going to raise beef together. She decided to go a different route. She didn't want the steers on her land because we were going to have to build new fences and everything, and she just didn't feel like we had, or she wanted to take on that responsibility with us not being there full time, and needing hay storage and so on, which we didn't have the infrastructure for. So she decided she just wanted to go with smaller animals. So she's raising chickens and mainly goats for red meat and milk, and we just weren't interested in that. So we're not doing that together. So we need to find a way of raising our own beef again like we've done in the past. We really enjoyed doing that. They're relatively easy to raise compared to like goats, for example, and pigs aren't bad, but we don't eat much pork. Might do pigs, I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, we're probably going to end up partnering with somebody to own a herd together. That's something, like I said, I got to close that loophole somehow. We're also considering other places that have more abundant deer and more deer tags available so that we can eat, harvest and eat mostly wild game, venison in that case. Plus I might just travel a little bit further outside this area for moose and harvest some moose every year, maybe even 2 with my wife, we'll see. So we've got to figure that out. We have to figure out the red meat, need to start producing more of that. But regardless of that, I need to make sure that we have a backup plan. Now in the cellar, you've seen on the shelves down there all of the pails. We have at least I think a year and a half of stored food. These are foods that we don't like to eat anymore, though. It's grains, like so wheat berries, barley, rice, peas, lentils, things like that. Like I said, they're not in our regular routine or in our regular diet, but they're good as a survival food. So that's our backup. But I don't like not having potatoes as well. So potatoes and carrots. So I think next year I'll grow and strive to grow enough to provide most of our calories in the case of an emergency situation. So this grows in pretty good back in here, and I can actually grow probably 500 pounds just right here in that quarter acre. I think it's quarter acre, 150, 200, something like that. So we'll probably do that. I'm sure I'll do that again next spring. So I'm going to spend some time just cleaning that garden up in the spring. A lot of ferns are growing up, plus like that was dense forest, right? I cut it down to the ground before we put that greenhouse in, and the stumps are sprouting and they're starting to shade out the rest of the garden, because the stump sprouts are getting like 5-6 feet high, 8 feet high in some cases, like the black cherry. So I've got to cut all that out, get the ferns out of there, and just let more sun get in. There is a lot of blueberries and sea buckthorn in there. It's like sea berries, not the wild buckthorn, like an invasive buckthorn. Raspberries and so on. So I have to clean it up and just make sure there's more sunlight hitting the ground so that we can grow all those potatoes and carrots back in there. What else? Just continuing to improve the habitat so that the deer population, bear population continues to increase. Small game, making small game brush piles everywhere, and just trying to cut more trees down so more sunlight hits the forest floor. We get more dense cover and more things like aspen shoots for grouse and rabbits, black cherry, hazelnut, just all kinds of berries and fruits and nuts and stuff, seeds for the wildlife, for the small game, so we can start harvesting more of those as well. And ducks. This stream is running a little less than usual, and it's because part of what it's because of is back here. This one pond is low. We've had very little rain this year compared to usual, and it's been hotter, so it's a lot drier. So the back pond, or the top pond back beyond the food plot, I don't know if a beaver dammed that up or it's just dry, but the pond back here, that two meadows up, the beaver has dammed that, and that is new. We didn't have any beavers back here for the last 5 years, so there hasn't been, it's been free flowing. So a beaver dammed that up, and that pond is starting to fill, so it's taking time to fill before it overflows and continues to feed the stream. So I think it'll be full for sure in the spring, like after the snow melt, and this stream here will be back up again. So that's creating more duck and goose habitat, plus beaver. I do have a trapper's license. I could probably get permission to trap beaver back there, which is for food, not just for pelts. And I could focus more on small game, actually, or small fur-bearing animals for food as well. Anyway, that's the plan. So that's what I'm going to do next year. It's how we failed this year, and I'm just not going to let that happen again. I don't want that food insecurity. The shelter, obviously, it's almost done. Our water is good. We're going to continue to, or I'm going to make a better water collection system off these roofs to feed into the tote that's in the basement that feeds up to give us water for cooking, cleaning, and drinking up here. So that's food, shelter, energy. I do have more solar panels. You can see on the shed, I had 6 of these panels, which are 320 watt panels, and 3 are running the that shed, which I have the freezer in, which I have our food stored in, like our meat stored in. These are obviously not enough for the cabin. They're not bad because I don't run a lot of power in here, but I could do with probably 3 times that amount, especially for the off season, so I don't have to run the generator to charge the batteries. But anyway, I'm fairly happy with our energy. I know it's easy just to expand. I've got lots of battery storage, just need more panels to charge those batteries without it having to use gas to run the generator. And obviously my cooking and heating is all done with wood, so that's a main energy source, I guess you could say. Well, I guess that's it. That's all I want to share with you this week. Next week's video, I'll have that bedroom done by next week for sure. I actually got all of the ceiling done today and some of the walls, so next I'm just going to finish the back wall that's going behind the bed, so the north wall, and then a little bit of trim work and stuff on the ceiling. So then floor, just get all that grouted, that siding grouted, and then I can do the floor without worrying about getting cement on it, and then move the bed and stuff into there. And every day I have to do a few stones on this chimney. I got to get that done before winter, so hopefully this weather holds out and I get another month of enough days that the nighttime temperature is not below freezing, so that I can put those stones on without them popping off. So like I said, next week's video will be the inside, probably get the chimney done, and then I've got a bunch of other things to share with you shortly. Anyway, thanks for watching, appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you back here at the cabin next time. Take care.